In the glittering towers of Manhattan's elite media district, where fortunes are built on faces and reputations crumble with a single viral moment, there lived a man who believed he was untouchable. Marcus Rothwell III wasn't just wealthy, he was television royalty, heir to the largest beauty and lifestyle network in America. At 28, his perfectly sculpted jaw had graced more magazine covers than most models twice his age. His family's empire, built on cosmetics and media influence, gave him a throne he never earned, but wielded like a weapon. 30 floors below, in the building's modest studio spaces reserved for freelance talent, worked someone who possessed everything Marcus lacked: genuine skill, earned through years of struggle. Elena Chen, 32 years old, had spent 14 years perfecting her craft. Not the craft of self-promotion or networking, but the delicate art of transformation through makeup. Her hands, steady despite the arthritis she'd developed from years of detailed work, could turn ordinary faces into magazine-worthy visions. She'd worked her way up from wedding makeup in Queens to finally landing occasional gigs at Rothwell Studios. Elena wasn't beautiful by magazine standards. She wore simple clothes from discount stores, her own face bare except for drugstore moisturizer. Her equipment, though meticulously maintained, showed its age brushes re-wrapped with tape, a kit bag patched in 3 places, products carefully rationed to last. But when she worked, something magical happened. She didn't just apply makeup. She understood bone structure, light theory, color science. She could make a tired executive look 10 years younger, or transform an average person into a star. The collision of their worlds began with what should have been Elena's breakthrough moment. Rothwell Studios was launching its most ambitious project yet, a live television special called The Beauty Throne, where Marcus himself would judge makeup artists competing for a contract worth $2 million and a position as the network's chief makeup designer. Elena had submitted her portfolio 17 times over 3 years. This time, inexplicably, she'd been selected for the live auditions. The letter had arrived on a Tuesday. Elena had read it 6 times, her hands shaking. This was it, the chance to provide for her sick mother, to finally be recognized for her talent rather than her connections. She'd spent her last $400 on new products for the competition, skipping meals to afford the professional-grade foundations the show would expect. Marcus, meanwhile, had approved her application by accident. His assistant had included her portfolio in a stack of diversity candidates the network needed for optics. He'd been scrolling through his phone, blindly stamping approvals, planning his weekend in the Hamptons. Elena Chen's fate had been decided by a man who wouldn't remember her name 5 seconds after reading it. The morning of the live show arrived wrapped in spring rain. Elena had been at the studio since 3 a.m., preparing her station with the precision of a surgeon. Every brush was laid out in perfect order. Every product was labeled and arranged by application sequence. She'd practiced her demonstration routine 200 times. Her hands didn't shake anymore, muscle memory had taken over. The other contestants arrived in waves. They wore designer clothes and carried Louis Vuitton makeup cases. They air-kissed and networked, already playing the game Elena didn't know existed. She stood alone at her station, wearing her best black dress, 8 years old but carefully pressed, and waited. Marcus arrived at noon, 3 hours late, cocaine confidence radiating from his dilated pupils. He'd been partying until 5 a.m., celebrating a tabloid cover story about his latest conquest. His makeup team, yes. He had a team spent an hour covering the bags under his eyes, the broken capillaries from too much champagne. He walked past the contestants like they were furniture, his attention on his phone, live tweeting his arrival to his 3 million followers. The format was simple and cruel. Each artist would have 15 minutes to demonstrate their signature technique on a model, live before the cameras and a studio audience of industry insiders. Marcus would provide commentary throughout, his words broadcast to millions. What Elena didn't know was that Marcus had already decided to make an example of someone. The producers had told him the show needed drama, a viral moment. He'd scrolled through the contestants' photos that morning and chosen his target, the plainest, poorest-looking one. The one who didn't belong. Elena was sixth to perform. The first 5 contestants had created beautiful but safe looks, the kind of glamorous, predictable makeup that filled fashion magazines. Marcus had praised them with hollow superlatives, barely looking at the actual work. But as Elena stepped forward, his posture changed. He leaned forward, a predator scenting weakness. She began her demonstration with quiet confidence. Her technique was revolutionary, a layering method that used light and shadow to completely restructure how a face appeared on camera. She'd developed it herself, studying theater makeup and combining it with modern HD television requirements. Within 5 minutes, her model's ordinary features had begun transforming into something extraordinary. 7 minutes into Elena's demonstration, Marcus stood up. The cameras swiveled to follow him as he walked toward her station. Elena's hands never wavered, but her peripheral vision caught his approach. He circled her like a shark, his cologne, $500 an ounce, overwhelming the small space. Then he began his dissection. First, he touched her kit with one finger, as if it might contaminate him, and laughed. The sound echoed through the studio. He picked up one of her brushes, the one held together with tape, and held it up to the camera like evidence of a crime. His expression was pure disgust. The audience, taking their cue, began to chuckle. He moved to her products next, reading the drugstore brand names with exaggerated horror, shaking his head in theatrical disbelief. His hands, soft, manicured, never having known real work, gestured wildly as he performed his mockery for the cameras. Elena kept working, her face burning, sweat beginning to bead despite the studio's aggressive air conditioning. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with props. He wanted tears. He began narrating her appearance to the audience. Her dress, so carefully pressed that morning, was described as something from a clearance rack. Her shoes, which she'd polished until they shone, were dismissed as the footwear of someone who clearly took the subway. He wondered aloud how someone who couldn't even afford proper equipment expected to work in high fashion, how someone who didn't even wear makeup herself presumed to teach others about beauty. The model in Elena's chair began to shift uncomfortably. Elena had created something stunning, a look that would have graced any magazine cover, but Marcus wasn't looking at the model. He was performing character assassination as Bloodsport. Then he delivered the killing blow. He pulled up Elena's application on his tablet, projecting it on the studio's main screen. He read her address aloud, Queens, a neighborhood he mocked as being where dreams go to die. He found her Instagram, only 300 followers. He discovered she'd been rejected 17 times before, and announced this fact with cruel glee. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. They were witnessing an execution. Elena's hands finally stopped. She stood there, in front of 200 industry insiders and millions of viewers, as Marcus systematically destroyed not just her chances in the competition, but her entire career. Every connection she might have made, every door that might have opened, slammed shut with each word. Her mother was watching at home. Her mother, who'd been so proud. Marcus declared her eliminated before she'd even finished. Security guards, as if she were a threat, escorted her from the studio. She walked through a gauntlet of cameras, her carefully pressed dress now wrinkled with stress, sweat, her kit bag feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The other contestants avoided eye contact. Nobody wanted to be associated with the massacre they'd witnessed. The 15-minute walk to the subway felt like hours. Her phone began buzzing immediately. The clip was already viral. Delusional woman destroyed on live TV. Heir obliterates wannabe makeup artist. The most brutal reality TV moment ever. 3 million views in the first hour. 20 million by evening. By the time she reached her mother's apartment, her entire life had been dismantled. Clients cancelled. The small salon where she rented a chair on weekends called to say she was no longer needed. Her Instagram flooded with mockery and hate from Marcus's millions of followers. Death threats, rape threats. Strangers had found her mother's address. Elena sat on her childhood bed, in the room she'd never been able to afford to leave, and stared at her kit bag. 14 years of work, destroyed in 15 minutes. Her mother, sick and frail, held her as she finally broke, sobbing until she couldn't breathe. The dream wasn't just dead, it had been publicly executed for entertainment. 3 weeks passed in a haze of humiliation and despair. Elena had stopped leaving the apartment. Marcus Rothwell had moved on to his next victim, his next party, his next magazine cover. The video of her destruction had become a meme, her face photoshopped onto failure after failure. She'd become the internet's symbol of delusion. Then, on a rain-soaked Thursday evening, a knock came at the door. Elena answered in sweatpants and despair, expecting another process server or threatening neighbor. Instead, she found a woman in a $10,000 suit holding an umbrella that cost more than Elena's monthly rent. The woman's face was elegant, ageless, familiar but unplaceable. She studied Elena with eyes that missed nothing. Behind her stood 2 men in identical black suits, bodyguards. This wasn't a social call. The woman smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who'd just found the perfect weapon. She extended a business card made of metal, not paper. The name embossed on it made Elena's blood freeze. Victoria Rothwell Castellane, Marcus's father's first wife, the woman he'd divorced in a scandal that had cost her everything, the woman who'd spent 20 years planning her revenge, the woman who now owned the second largest beauty empire in America, Rothwell Corporation's only real rival. She spoke just 5 words before turning to leave, words that would change everything. I saw what he did. The card in Elena's trembling hand contained only a phone number and a single line of text. When you're ready to destroy him, call me. For 3 days, Elena stared at that metal card. It sat on her nightstand like a loaded gun, catching light whenever she moved. She'd Googled Victoria Rothwell Castellane extensively. The woman was a legend wrapped in scandal, married to Marcus's father for only 2 years before a divorce that had nearly destroyed her. She'd been accused of corporate espionage, adultery, fraud, none of it proven. What was proven was that she'd taken her settlement and built an empire that now threatened everything the Rothwell family had created. On the fourth day, at exactly 3 a.m., the same hour she used to arrive at the studio, Elena made the call. A car arrived within 15 minutes. Not a taxi or an Uber, but a Rolls-Royce that glided through Queens like an alien spacecraft. The driver said nothing, merely opened the door. Elena climbed in wearing the same sweatpants she'd lived in for weeks, clutching her old kit bag like a lifeline. The drive led to a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a building overlooking Central Park. Victoria was waiting, still in perfect makeup at 4 a.m., as if she never slept. She walked around Elena slowly, studying her like an artist evaluating a canvas. Then she gestured to a mirror, a full-length antique worth more than most cars. Elena saw herself, hollow eyes, unwashed hair, the posture of someone defeated. Victoria stood behind her and for the first time smiled genuinely. She pulled out a tablet and showed Elena something that changed everything: financial records proving Marcus had been sabotaging contestants for years, paying off judges, destroying careers for sport. But more importantly, she showed Elena a photograph. Marcus's greatest rival, the one person he truly feared. The photograph showed Alexander Constantine, 35, self-made, brilliant, and everything Marcus pretended to be. He'd built his cosmetics company from nothing, starting in his garage in Detroit, and was now worth $2 billion. But more than that, he was about to launch the most ambitious project in beauty industry history, a global competition called The Creator's Crown, with a $50 million prize pool. It would air on every major network except Rothwell's, on the same night as Marcus's season finale. Alexander had one problem: he was terrible on camera. His genius was in business and innovation, but he lacked Marcus's inherited camera presence. He needed transformation. He needed someone who could make him not just competitive, but devastating. He needed magic. Victoria had already made the arrangement. Alexander was expecting them. They drove to his Manhattan office, notably modest compared to Rothwell Tower, but humming with real work rather than inherited privilege. Alexander emerged from a lab where he'd been working since midnight, wearing a wrinkled shirt, his hair unkempt, his face showing exhaustion. But his eyes burned with the same hunger Elena recognized in her mirror, the hunger of someone with something to prove. He'd seen the video, everyone had, but unlike the others, he'd watched Elena's hands, studied her technique, recognized the genius that Marcus had mocked. He'd also grown up poor, fought for everything, been dismissed and humiliated by people like Marcus his entire life. Victoria's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Elena would have 6 weeks to transform Alexander into someone who could destroy Marcus on camera. Not just compete, destroy. What followed was 6 weeks of the most intense work of Elena's life. Victoria had arranged everything: a private studio, unlimited budget for products, access to technology Elena had only dreamed of. But more than that, she'd arranged for Elena herself to be transformed. The first week was brutal. Victoria brought in experts not just in makeup, but in psychological warfare. Elena learned that appearance wasn't just about beauty, it was about power projection. She studied how different angles could make someone appear dominant or weak, how color temperature could trigger subconscious responses, how micro-expressions could be enhanced or hidden with the right techniques. She worked on Alexander 18 hours a day. His face became her canvas, but more importantly, her weapon. She didn't just make him handsome, she made him dangerous. She taught him how makeup could enhance his natural intensity, how the right contouring could make his jawline cut like a blade on camera, how strategic highlighting could make his eyes pierce through a screen. But Elena was changing too. Victoria had her training, physically posture classes, presentation skills. Her worn clothes were replaced with carefully chosen pieces that said artist, not victim. Her own face, which she'd never bothered with, became a subtle advertisement for her skills. Not overdone, but perfect. The kind of face that made people lean in and wonder what was different. Week by week, Alexander transformed. The scientist became a warrior. His natural intelligence, freed from self-consciousness about his appearance, became laser-focused. When he looked in the mirror now, he didn't see the kid from Detroit who'd been laughed at. He saw someone who could win. 3 days before the dual broadcasts, Victoria revealed the final piece of her plan. She'd arranged for something unprecedented, a live split-screen broadcast where viewers could watch both shows simultaneously. The networks had agreed, smelling ratings gold. Marcus's finale would feature him judging the final contestants from his show. Alexander's premiere would feature him announcing his competition. But that wasn't the masterstroke. Victoria had orchestrated for the makeup artists from both shows to be revealed live. Marcus would be made up by his usual team, competent but uninspired. Alexander would be transformed by his secret weapon, though Elena's identity would remain hidden until the perfect moment. Marcus, cocaine-confident and dismissive of any competition, had agreed to the split-screen format. He believed his inherited charisma and established audience would crush any upstart. He'd spent the week partying, barely preparing, treating the whole thing as a joke. His social media was full of mockery toward Alexander, calling him the garage sale billionaire and Detroit's desperate attempt at relevance. Elena spent those 3 days in meditation-like focus. Every stroke she would make was planned. Every product was tested and retested. She knew Marcus's face better than he did. She'd studied thousands of hours of his footage, learned every flaw he hid, every angle he avoided. She knew exactly how to make Alexander look like everything Marcus pretended to be. The night arrived, wrapped in anticipation. 20 million viewers tuned in for the unprecedented split-screen event. On the left side of America's screens, Marcus, in his element, sitting on his throne-like chair, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. On the right, Alexander, still being prepared behind a strategic curtain building suspense. Marcus opened strong, his natural media training evident. He jokes, he charmed, he commanded attention with the ease of someone who'd never had to earn it. His makeup team had done their usual work. He looked good, but in the same way he always looked. Safe, predictable, inherited perfection without innovation. Then Alexander's curtain dropped. The transformation was so complete that viewers actually gasped. Social media exploded instantly. Alexander didn't just look good, he looked like power incarnate. Every angle of his face had been sculpted to perfection. The lighting, which Elena had personally designed and positioned, hit him like he was carved from marble. But it was his eyes that captured attention. Elena had found a way to make them burn through the camera, intense and impossible to look away from. Marcus, watching on his monitor, faltered mid-sentence. His recovery was professional, but viewers caught it. For the first time in his life, Marcus Rothwell III looked second best on screen. 30 minutes into the broadcast, Victoria played her card. She'd arranged for a special segment about the artists behind the transformations. Marcus's team was introduced. First, 3 competent professionals who'd been doing his makeup the same way for 5 years. They waved politely. The audience barely noticed. Then came Alexander's introduction. He spoke about finding an artist who understood that makeup wasn't about covering flaws, but revealing strength. Someone who'd been dismissed by the industry but possessed more talent than anyone he'd ever met. Someone who'd been humiliated by those who confused inheritance with ability. The camera slowly panned to reveal Elena. But not the Elena from 6 weeks ago. She stood with perfect posture, wearing a simple but elegant black outfit that whispered, rather than screamed, success. Her own makeup, subtle but flawless, showed mastery through restraint. Her kit, now premium but organized with the same meticulous care, gleamed under the lights. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her work was speaking for her. Marcus's face went white beneath his foundation. The split screen became a study in contrasts, his shock against Alexander's calm satisfaction. The social media explosion was instant and brutal. The video of Elena's humiliation was being shared alongside her triumph. The narrative wrote itself. The rejected artist returning as the master. Alexander announced that Elena would demonstrate her technique live, showing America exactly how she'd achieved his transformation. This wasn't in Marcus's script. He couldn't leave, it would look like retreat. He had to sit there and watch as Elena systematically revealed every secret, every technique, every innovation she'd developed. She worked on a volunteer from the audience, an ordinary man in his 40s who'd never worn makeup in his life. Within 20 minutes, she'd transformed him into someone who could grace a magazine cover. But she wasn't just applying makeup, she was teaching, explaining, demystifying. She spoke about bone structure with the authority of a surgeon, about light theory like a physicist, about color like an artist. Every sentence was a quiet rebuke to Marcus's mockery. Every technique she demonstrated surpassed anything his team had ever achieved. She mentioned, almost casually, that she'd developed these methods while working with drugstore products, that excellence wasn't about expensive tools, but understanding and innovation. The volunteer looked in the mirror and actually cried. 20 years of insecurity about his appearance, erased in 20 minutes by someone Marcus had called delusional. Marcus's show continued, but nobody was watching anymore. The metrics were brutal. 90% of viewers were focused on Alexander's side of the screen. His contestants looked amateur in comparison. His throne looked like what it was, a prop for someone playing at power. As both shows approached their finale, Alexander delivered the masterstroke Victoria had planned. He announced that his competition would have special judges, industry legends who'd agreed to participate. He named them one by one, and each name was a dagger to Marcus's heart. His father's former partners, beauty icons who'd been insulted by Marcus's arrogance, photographers who'd refused to work with him anymore. And then, the final judge, Helena Rodriguez, the legendary makeup artist who'd created the looks for 15 Academy Award-winning films. Marcus had publicly insulted her techniques last year, calling them outdated and irrelevant. She appeared on screen, sitting next to Alexander, and spoke directly to the camera. She praised Elena's work as revolutionary, comparing it to innovations she hadn't seen in 30 years of career. She mentioned, pointedly, that true artists didn't need to destroy others to elevate themselves. That real talent spoke through work, not words. that she'd been watching Elena for years, waiting for her moment. Then she revealed the true devastation. Every major beauty brand under Alexander's umbrella would be switching to Elena's techniques. She would be creative director for a new line of products designed for real artists, not trust fund babies playing with makeup. The contracts were already signed. The girl from Queens who couldn't afford proper brushes would now be designing them for millions. Marcus's finale announcement, a new show where he'd judge beauty influencers, sounded hollow and desperate in comparison. His $2 million prize looked like pocket change next to Alexander's $50 million. His inherited throne was crumbling while he sat on it. The split-screen format that Marcus had agreed to became his public execution. Social media had already crowned its winner. Number Elena returns was trending worldwide. Number Marcus exposed was close behind. Videos comparing their techniques went viral instantly. Marcus's team's dated methods against Elena's innovations. Beauty influencers who'd previously fawned over Marcus switched sides in real time, not wanting to be associated with the losing side. But the most devastating moment came when someone leaked footage from after Elena's humiliation, Marcus laughing with his team, imitating her accent, calling her the charity case from Queens. The same night, footage emerged of Elena working for free at women's shelters, teaching abuse survivors how to cover bruises, helping them reclaim their faces and confidence. The contrast was absolute. One person destroyed others for entertainment. The other built others up through service. Within an hour of the show's ending, Rothwell Corporation's stock had dropped 12%. 3 major sponsors announced they were reassessing their relationships with Marcus's shows. His Instagram followers dropped by 1 million in real time, while Elena's grew by 3 million. She didn't post anything she didn't need to. Her work was speaking louder than Marcus's words ever could. The next morning, Marcus Rothwell III woke up to a changed world. His father, who'd built the empire Marcus inherited, called him into his office. The conversation was short. Marcus was being moved to brand development in the European office corporate exile. His shows were being restructured. His throne was being dismantled, literally. Workers were already removing it from the studio. Elena woke up to 800 interview requests, which she declined. She had work to do. Her first act as creative director was to establish a scholarship program for aspiring makeup artists from low-income backgrounds. Her second was to hire the 3 contestants from Marcus's show who'd been kindest to her talent, recognized talent, and she would never become what Marcus had been. Victoria Rothwell Castellane visited her one last time, satisfied with her investment. She revealed one final truth. She'd been filming a documentary about the entire event. Every moment, every preparation, every transformation had been captured. It would be released in 6 months, titled The Artist's Hand, a complete dismantling of not just Marcus, but the entire culture of inherited privilege, crushing earned talent. Marcus's attempt to sue was laughed out of court. Every word spoken had been true. Every technique demonstrated had been original. Every success earned rather than inherited. He'd been defeated not by lies or manipulation, but by simple, devastating competence. The Rothwell building still dominated the Manhattan skyline, but its shadow had shortened. Marcus's face no longer graced magazine covers. His Instagram, once millions strong, had dwindled to bought followers and bitter posts. He worked in Paris, managing fragrance campaigns for department stores. his golden boy status, a memory that hurt more than helped. Elena's studio occupied 3 floors of a building in Queens by choice. She could have afforded Manhattan, but she wanted to stay where hunger lived, where dreams were desperate enough to fight. Her techniques were being taught in schools worldwide. Her products, affordable but revolutionary, had democratized professional makeup. The girl who'd been mocked for her drugstore brands had made excellence accessible to everyone. Her mother, receiving the best treatment money could buy, lived to see her daughter's vindication. On quiet mornings, Elena still arrived at 3 a.m. not because she had to, but because discipline was her foundation. Her hands, once shaking with humiliation, now steady with purpose, continued their work. The metal business card from Victoria sat framed in her office, a reminder that revenge was best served not cold, but with perfect precision. Below it hung a simple sign that every student who entered her academy would see. Talent is earned, excellence is practiced, kindness is chosen. Never forget which one matters most. Marcus Rothwell III had created his destroyer through cruelty. Elena Chen had destroyed him through competence. The heir had fallen, the artist had risen. And in the end, the only throne that mattered was the one built from genuine ability, a throne that no inheritance could buy and no mockery could topple. Justice, like perfect makeup, was all about the application. The video of Elena's original humiliation peaked at 47 million views. The video of her triumph surpassed 100 million. Marcus's final show averaged 200,000 viewers. Alexander's premiere, featuring Elena's work, drew 35 million. The Rothwell Corporation lost 40% of its value in 6 months. Alexander's company became the industry leader, with Elena's innovations setting new standards worldwide. But the only number that truly mattered was 1. The number of times Elena had gotten back up after being knocked down. That number was every single time. The heir thought he was untouchable. The artist proved that talent, properly applied, could touch anything and transform it completely.